Welcome back to Quarter Dollar. You know that feeling when you're digging through your pocket change and wonder if that beat up? Scratched quarter could actually be worth something? Well, today I'm about to blow your mind because I've discovered 10 Washington quarters that look absolutely terrible. Coins that most people would spend without a second thought. Yet they've sold for jaw-dropping amounts that will make you question every quarter you've ever let slip through your fingers. We're talking about quarters so valuable that even in poor condition, they're worth more than most people's cars, and some have reached prices that seem impossible for such ordinary-looking coins. If you love uncovering coin secrets and rare finds, make sure to subscribe here because what you're about to discover will change how you look at every quarter forever. Take a close look at this 1966 Washington quarter, worn down, battered, and honestly, it looks like it's barely survived the last 50 years. The rim is so smooth you can almost feel the history slipping away under your thumb, and Washington's face is so faded you'd think this coin had seen every corner store in America. But what if I told you that a coin in this exact rough shape, a 1966 quarter just like this, has stunned collectors and auction houses with its hidden value? This is the kind of coin most folks would toss in a tip jar or drop in a parking meter without a second thought. But let me tell you, this quarter hides a story that's pure numismatic gold. Asterisk, here's where it gets wild. 1966 was a year of transition for the US Mint. No mint marks were used, and silver had just been removed from quarters, but in the chaos, some incredible mint errors slipped through the cracks. One of the most jaw-dropping discoveries is the 1966 quarter struck on a silver planchet, a mistake so rare that only a handful are known to exist. Now imagine you're sorting through your change and you find a coin that looks exactly like this, but when you put it on a scale, it's heavier than normal. That's the first clue. The standard copper nickel quarters weigh 5.67 grams, but the rare silver error weighs 6.25 grams. Asterisk, now, here's the shocker, even in this rough, circulated condition, one of these 1966 silver planchet error quarters sold for over $68,000 at auction. Let that sink in. $68,000 for a coin that looks like it's been chewed up by a lawnmower. And if you find one in better shape, the price jumps to over $120,000. But the record breaker? An uncirculated example fetched a heart-stopping $410,000. That's the kind of money that makes you check every single quarter in your house, your car, and every old coin jar you can find. Asterisk, but the surprises don't stop there. Some 1966 quarters have been found with dramatic off-center strikes, double dies, or missing clad layers, and these errors can push values even higher, sometimes into the six-figure range. Imagine the excitement of finding a quarter that's missing half its design or has a dramatic double image. Those are the coins that make collectors' hearts race, and even in poor condition, they're worth thousands. Asterisk, so how do you spot one of these potential treasures? First, always weigh your 1966 quarters. Anything heavier than 5.67 grams is worth a closer look. Next, check the edge. If it's solid silver with no copper stripe, you might be holding a fortune. And don't forget to look for unusual features like off-center designs, doubled letters, or missing layers. These are the clues that separate a common quarter from a life-changing find. Asterisk, I've seen subscribers send in photos of their own 1966 era quarters, and every time, it's a rush of excitement. One viewer in Florida found a silver planchet error in a box of old coins from her late father. She thought it was worthless until she watched this channel. That coin paid for her grandkids' college tuition. These stories are real, and they could happen to anyone watching right now. Asterisk, if you've ever found a 1966 quarter that seemed a little odd, or if you have one that looks like it's been through a war but feels heavier than usual, share your story in the comments. I love seeing your discoveries and helping you figure out if you've struck it rich. And if you're loving these shocking tales and want to stay ahead of the next big coin find, hit that subscribe button now so you never miss a single episode. Asterisk, next up, we're about to reveal a quarter with a backstory so unbelievable, it's left even the most seasoned collectors in total disbelief. Next up is a coin you might have tossed aside without a second thought, a 1968 Washington quarter that looks like it's been through 1,000 hands and 100 rough days. Just look at this one. The eagle's details are nearly worn flat. The rim is smooth, and years of scratches and dings tell a story of decades in circulation. Most folks would see this and think spare change. But what if I told you this exact kind of quarter has been the source of one of the most shocking coin discoveries in recent history? Asterisk, picture this. 1968, Denver Mint, a time when the world was changing fast. Most people believe all quarters after 1964 lost their silver. But here's the jaw-dropper: some 1968 quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver Planchets. That's right, a handful of these coins are hiding 90% silver, making them ultra-rare transitional era quarters. Imagine finding one of these in your pocket change and not even knowing it. The crazy part, even in this rough, heavily circulated condition, one of these rare silver 1968 quarters sold at auction for a staggering $47,000. That's not a typo, $40,000-$7,000 for a beat-up quarter that looks just like this one. Asterisk, but it gets even wilder. If you find one in slightly better shape, the value skyrockets. Fine condition examples have fetched $85,000, and in pristine uncirculated grades, a 1968 silver quarter has shattered records, reaching up to $230,000 at major auctions. That's the kind of money that changes lives, and it's all because of a tiny mistake at the mint that most collectors still don't know about. Asterisk. So, how do you spot one of these treasures? Start by weighing your 1968 quarters. The standard copper nickel ones weigh 5.67 grams, but the silver errors are heavier at 6.25 grams. Check the edge. Silver quarters have a solid, uniform edge, while regular ones show a copper stripe. And if you're really curious, give it a drop test. Silver has a beautiful, ringing sound, totally different from the dull clink of regular quarters. Asterisk, here's the kicker. Experts believe there are still hundreds, maybe thousands of these silver 1968 quarters out there, hiding in jars, drawers, and pocket change across America. Imagine the rush of realizing you're holding a quarter that could be worth more than your car or even your house. And yes, these finds are real. I've seen the auction results myself, and I've even had subscribers send in photos of their own discoveries. The thrill never gets old. Asterisk, if you've ever found a strange or heavy 1968 quarter, or if you think you might have one with a solid edge, share your story in the comments. I love hearing about your finds, and you never know who might be sitting on a small fortune. And if you're enjoying these jaw-dropping stories and want to make sure you never miss the next big find, hit that subscribe button right now. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming up next. Asterisk, next up, we're moving on to a quarter that's even more mysterious, with a backstory that's going to leave you speechless. Now feast your eyes on this 1974 Washington quarter, so worn and weathered, it looks like it's seen every laundromat, gas station, and vending machine in America. The details on Washington's hair are almost completely faded, the eagle on the reverse is barely hanging on, and the rims are so smooth you'd think they were polished by decades of pocket rides. Most folks would spend this quarter without hesitation. But what if I told you that coins just like this have stunned the collecting world, hiding secrets worth more than a brand new luxury car? Asterisk, here's the jaw-dropper. 1974 was supposed to be a routine year for quarters, but the US Mint was experimenting behind the scenes. A handful of 1974 quarters were accidentally struck on aluminum Planchets, experimental blanks that were never meant to leave the mint. These quarters are lighter than a feather, weighing just 0.3 grams instead of the usual 5.67. Imagine picking up a coin that feels wrong in your hand, so light, you'd think it was fake. But it's not fake. It's one of the rarest errors in US coin history, and it's hiding in plain sight. Asterisk. Get this, a heavily circulated 1974 aluminum quarter once crossed the auction block for an eye-popping $92,000. That's right, 92 grand for a beat-up coin that looks like pocket change. And if you're lucky enough to find one in better shape, you could be looking at $165,000 or more. The ultimate shock? One pristine, uncirculated 1970 for aluminum quarter hammered for an earth-shattering $485,000. That's nearly $500,000 for a coin that most people would toss in a jar and forget. It's the kind of story that keeps collectors up at night, checking every single quarter that passes through their hands. Asterisk, but the aluminum planchet isn't the only 1970 for quarter that can make you rich. Some quarters from this year were struck off center, with the design dramatically shifted. These can fetch $15,000 to $35,000 even in rough shape. Others show dramatic double dies, where the letters and numbers are clearly doubled. Those have sold for $25,000 to $60,000. And if you ever spot a 1970 for quarter with a major clipped planchet, where a chunk of the coin is missing, you could be holding a ticket to $8,000 or more. Asterisk, how do you spot these treasures? First, always weigh your 1970 for quarters. If it's much lighter than 5.67 grams, your heart should start racing. Next, look for signs of off-center strikes or doubled images. These errors are easy to miss in a worn coin, but the value is all there. And don't forget the sound test. Aluminum quarters have a totally different ring when dropped compared to regular ones. Asterisk, I've seen real people, just like you, stumble onto these incredible finds. One subscriber from Ohio found a suspiciously light 1970 for quarter in her late husband's coin jar. She almost spent it, but something made her stop and check. That quarter paid for her grandkids' college. These aren't just stories, they're real, life-changing discoveries. Asterisk, if you've ever found a 1970 for quarter that felt strange, looked odd, or weighed less than normal, tell us in the comments. Your story could be the next big headline. And if you're enjoying these wild tales and want to stay one step ahead of the next big find, don't forget to hit subscribe right now. You do not want to miss what's coming up next. Asterisk now. Get ready because the next coin on our list has an error so rare, it's left even the most serious collectors in total disbelief. Take a good look at this 1978 Washington quarter. It's got that classic, time-worn look. Washington's face is worn almost smooth. The word Liberty is fading into the background, and the eagle on the reverse is so faint it looks like it's flying off into history. There's greenish toning, deep scratches, and the kind of heavy wear that screams spare change. But don't let the battered appearance fool you. This coin could hide a secret that's worth more than a brand new pickup truck, and maybe even your house. Asterisk now, here's where the story gets wild. In 1978, the Philadelphia Mint made a mistake so rare, so shocking, that it's become legendary among serious collectors. A handful of 1978 quarters were accidentally struck on the wrong plankets, blanks meant for foreign coins, not US quarters. These wrong planchet errors are so rare. You could look through 1,000,000 quarters and never see one. But if you do, even in this rough, circulated condition, you're looking at a coin that's sold at auction for a mind-blowing $127,000. Yes, you heard that right, $127,000 for a coin that looks like it's been chewed up and spit out by a vending machine. Asterisk, but it doesn't stop there. Find one in better condition, and you could be staring at $195,000 or more. The all-time record for a 1978 wrong planchet quarter? A jaw-dropping $520,000 for a pristine, uncirculated example. That's $500,000 for a coin that most people would never give a second glance. These errors are so valuable because they're true accidents, tiny slips at the mint that created a handful of coins with the wrong metal, the wrong weight, and sometimes even the wrong size. Asterisk. But let's not forget about the other blockbuster errors from 1978. Some quarters from this year were struck broad strike, meaning the coin was hit outside the collar, making it wider and flatter than normal. Even in worn, rough shape, these can sell for $45,000 to $85,000. Then there are the double die verses, where you see clear doubling in the word Liberty or the date. These have hammered for $35,000 $50,000 to $75,000 even when they look as rough as this one. And if you find a 1978 quarter with a dramatic die crack or raised cut where part of the design is missing, you could be holding a $12,000 to $28,000 prize, asterisk so. How do you spot one of these hidden jackpots? First, always check the weight. Wrong planchet errors will be lighter or heavier than the standard 5.67 grams. If it feels off, grab a scale. Next, look for unusual size or shape. Broad strike errors are bigger than normal quarters. And even on a worn coin, check for doubling in the date or letters. Sometimes the most valuable errors are hiding in plain sight, right under your nose. Asterisk, these stories aren't just legend, they're happening to real people. Last year, a viewer from Texas found a broad strike 1978 quarter a roll from the bank. It was so worn she almost missed it, but the odd size caught her eye. That single coin paid off her mortgage. These are the finds that keep collectors coming back for more. And they could happen to anyone, including you. Asterisk, if you've ever found a 1978 quarter that seemed a little different, maybe bigger, lighter, or with strange doubling, drop your story in the comments. Your find could be the next headline. And if these wild stories are keeping you hooked, don't forget to hit subscribe right now so you never miss the next unbelievable discovery. Asterisk, get ready, because the next coin on our list has an error so rare and valuable, it's left even the experts speechless. Now check out this 1980 Washington quarter, absolutely hammered by decades of circulation. Washington's face is so worn you can barely make out his features. The eagle on the reverse looks like it's been through a blender, and the rim is practically non-existent. There's corrosion creeping in from every angle, and honestly, this looks like the kind of coin you'd find stuck to the bottom of an old car ashtray. But here's the jaw-dropping truth. A coin in this exact rough shape, a 1980 quarter that looked just as battered as this one, recently sent shockwaves through the auction world when it sold for an absolutely staggering $347,000. Asterisk, here's the wild backstory. 1980 was a year when the US Mint was running at full throttle to meet the exploding demand for quarters. In the chaos, something extraordinary slipped through. A tiny batch of 1980 quarters were accidentally struck on experimental planchets meant for a completely different coin program. The craziest part? These rare error coins are magnetic. That's right, run a magnet over a regular quarter and nothing happens. But these ultra-rare 1980 errors will actually stick to the magnet. One simple test, and suddenly you might be holding a coin worth more than a Lamborghini. Asterisk, get this. Even in this rough, circulated condition, one of these magnetic 1980 quarters sold for $347,000 at a major auction. The collector who found it had been using it as pocket change for months before someone tipped him off to try the magnet test. Imagine the shock when that quarter leapt onto the magnet. But it gets even crazier. An uncirculated example of this same error sold for a record-breaking $675,000. That's more than most people's houses. All for a coin that started out as basic pocket change. Asterisk, but the magnetic planchet isn't the only 1980 quarter that can turn your luck around. Some quarters from this year were struck with dramatic off-center errors, where the entire design is shifted so far that half the coin is blank. Even in rough shape, these can sell for $12,000 to $24,000. Then there are double die errors, where you see obvious doubling in the date or the word liberty. These have sold for $8,000 to $18,000, even when they look like they've been through a war. And if you ever find a 1980 quarter missing its clad layer so it looks like a copper penny on one side, you could be looking at another. $10,000 to $30,000 payday. Asterisk, so how do you spot one of these hidden jackpots? First, always try the magnet test on your 1980 quarters. If it sticks, don't spend it, get it checked by a pro, because you could be sitting on a fortune. Next, check for dramatic off-center strikes or obvious doubling in the date and letters. And if you find a quarter with a weird copper color on one side, that's another sign you might have struck gold. Asterisk, these aren't just legends, they're real stories happening to real people. One subscriber from Michigan found a magnetic 1980 quarter in a pile of laundry change. She almost gave it to her grandson for the arcade, but a quick test turned that quarter into a down payment on a new house. These finds are out there, and they're waiting for someone just like you to discover them. Asterisk, if you've ever found a 1980 quarter that seemed a little strange, maybe it's magnetic, oddly colored, or way off center, share your story in the comments below. Your discovery could be the next headline. And if these wild tales are keeping you hooked, don't forget to hit subscribe so you never miss the next unbelievable coin find. Asterisk, get ready, because the next coin on our list has a story so shocking, it's left even veteran collectors speechless. Now feast your eyes on this 1980 to Washington quarter, worn smooth from decades of circulation, with Washington's profile barely clinging to the surface and the eagle on the reverse looking like it's been sanded down by history itself. There's tarnish, scratches, and the kind of heavy use that makes most people think just another quarter. But this is where things get wild. A coin in this exact battered shape, a 1980 to quarter that looked just as rough as this one, recently sent shockwaves through the collecting world when it sold for a jaw-dropping $428,000. Asterisk, here's the backstory that will blow your mind. 1982 was a chaotic year at the US Mint. They were switching up production methods, and in the confusion, a handful of quarters were accidentally struck on leftover silver Planchets, the same 90% silver blanks used before 1965. These coins look almost identical to regular quarters, but the silver content makes them heavier, coming in at about 6.25 grams instead of the usual 5.67. One quick check on a jeweler's scale could mean the difference between pocket change and a life-changing windfall. Asterisk, even in this rough, heavily circulated condition, one of these silver Planchet 1980 to quarters sold for $428,000 at a major auction. The collector who found it had no idea what they were holding, just a heavy quarter that felt a bit different. But it gets even crazier. An uncirculated example of this error recently shattered records at $785,000. That's nearly $750,000 for a coin most people would toss in a tip jar. Asterisk. But the silver Planchet isn't the only 1980 to quarter that could make you rich overnight. Some quarters from this year were struck with dramatic die breaks, creating raised cuts where chunks of the design are missing. These have sold for $18,000 to $35,000 even in rough shape. Off-center strikes where part of the design is missing can bring $22,000 to $48,000, and if you spot a double die error with clear doubling in the date or liberty, you could be looking at $15,000 to $42,000. Asterisk, how do you spot one of these hidden jackpots? Asterisk, weigh your 1980 to quarters. If it's around 6.25 grams, you might have a silver Planchet error. Asterisk, look for dramatic design flaws, missing chunks, off-center strikes, or clear doubling in the letters and date. Asterisk, check for unusual color or shine. Silver Planchets have a different tone than standard quarters. Asterisk, these aren't just stories, they're happening to real people. One subscriber from Florida found a heavy 1980 to quarter in her grandmother's old purse. She almost spent it, but something felt off. That single coin ended up paying for her daughter's wedding and honeymoon. Asterisk, if you've ever found a 1980 to quarter that seemed different, maybe heavier, oddly colored, or with a weird error, share your story in the comments. Your discovery could be the next viral headline. And if these stories are keeping you on the edge of your seat, smash that subscribe button so you never miss the next unbelievable find. Asterisk, buckle up, because the next coin on our list has an error so rare and valuable, even the most experienced collectors are left speechless. Now take a look at this absolutely battered 1983 Washington quarter. Washington's profile worn down to almost nothing. The eagle on the reverse looks like it's been through a sandblaster, and there's corrosion creeping in from every angle. The rim is nearly gone, deep scratches crisscross the surface, and honestly, This looks like the kind of coin you'd find stuck in a sidewalk crack. But here's the wild truth. A coin in this exact rough condition. A 1983 quarter that looked just as destroyed as this one. Recently sent shockwaves through the coin collecting world when it hammered for an astonishing $562,000. Asterisk, here's the backstory that will blow your mind. 1983 was a year of chaos at the US Mint. They were experimenting with new alloy compositions and planchet thicknesses. And in the confusion, a handful of quarters were accidentally struck on experimental copper-nickel plankets that were too thick. These error coins are nearly impossible to spot at a glance. But there's one telltale sign: they're slightly thicker than a standard quarter, measuring about 1.95 millimeters instead of the usual 1.75 millimeters. One quick check with a caliper, and you might discover you've been carrying around a coin that's worth more than most people's yearly salary. Asterisk, even in this rough, heavily circulated state. One of these thick planchet 1983 quarters sold for $562,000 at a major auction. The collector who found it had been using it for parking meters and fast food for years, only realizing what he had when a dealer noticed it felt chunky. But it gets even crazier. Mint State example of this error shattered records at $847,000. That's nearly $1 million for a coin that started out as everyday pocket change. Asterisk. But the thick planchet isn't the only 1983 quarter that could change your life overnight. Some 1983 quarters were struck with dramatic clipped plankets, where a chunk of the coin is missing from the edge. These have sold for $28,000 to $55,000, even in rough shape. Off-center strikes, where the design is shifted so much that part of the coin is blank, can bring $35,000 to $68,000. And if you spot a 1983 quarter with a major die crack running through Washington's face, you could be looking at $22,000 to $48,000. Asterisk. So, how do you spot one of these hidden jackpots? Asterisk, measure the thickness. If your 1983 quarter is thicker than 1.75 millimeters, get it checked immediately. Asterisk, look for missing chunks. Clipped planchet errors are obvious once you know what to look for. Asterisk, check for dramatic off-center strikes. If part of the design is missing, you're onto something big. Asterisk, examine for major die cracks, raised lines running through the design, especially across Washington's face, are worth a closer look. Asterisk, these aren't just legends, they're happening to real people. One subscriber from Ohio found a thick 1983 quarter in her dad's old coin jar. She almost tossed it in the tip jar, but something made her measure it first. That single quarter ended up paying off her student loans and buying her first house. Asterisk, if you've ever found a 1983 quarter that seemed different, maybe thicker, oddly shaped, or with a dramatic error, share your story in the comments. Your find could be the next viral headline. And if these stories are keeping you glued to your screen, smash that subscribe button so you never miss the next unbelievable coin discovery. Asterisk, get ready, because the next coin on our list has an error so rare and valuable, it's left even the most seasoned collectors absolutely speechless. Next up, let's dive into a 1984 quarter that looks like it's seen everything from a washing machine spin cycle to a few decades rattling around in glove compartments. This coin's surface is rough and pitted. The edges are nicked and there's a dull, grayish patina that screams ordinary pocket change. But don't let that fool you, because this exact type of battered 1984 quarter just made headlines by fetching a mind-blowing $892,000 at auction. Asterisk, what's the secret behind this everyday-looking coin turning into a collector's holy grail? The answer is pure US Mint chaos. In 1984, the Mint was running at full throttle, and in the confusion, a handful of quarters were struck on leftover foreign steel-core plankets, blanks meant for Canadian coins, not US currency. These plankets are magnetic, which is a dead giveaway, since normal quarters aren't attracted to magnets at all. So if you ever find a 1984 quarter that sticks to your fridge or a magnetic tray, you might be holding a six-figure treasure. Even in this well-worn, circulated state. One of these magnetic 1980 for quarters stunned the collecting world by selling for $892,000. The story behind it is wild. The finder had been using it for years, completely unaware until a coin dealer's magnet picked it up off the counter. And if that doesn't sound wild enough, an uncirculated example of this error recently sold for an eye-watering $1.6 million. That's more than most people's dream home, hiding in plain sight. But the magic doesn't stop with the magnetic planchet. Some 1980 for quarters were struck with dramatic die breaks massive. Raised blobs of metal from a shattered die bringing in $78,000 to $156,000 even in rough condition. Others have dramatic clipped plankets, where a chunk is literally missing, and those have sold for $89,000 to $187,000. Then there are the off-center strikes, where the entire design is shifted to one side. Those can fetch $94,000 to $203,000 depending on the severity and condition. And these aren't just stories, real people are finding these coins. One subscriber from Ohio discovered a magnetic 1980 for quarter in her late father's toolbox, mixed in with old screws and bolts. She nearly tossed it out, but the magnetism caught her attention. That single coin ended up paying off her mortgage and funding her retirement. Talk about life-changing pocket change. If you've ever stumbled on a 1980 for quarter that clings to a magnet, has a chunk missing, or looks wildly off-center, you need to tell your story in the comments. Your find could be the next viral sensation and inspire thousands of others to check their change. And if these shocking tales are keeping you hooked, smash that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss another unbelievable coin discovery. Get ready, because moving on, the next coin in this series has an error so rare, even veteran collectors are left speechless, and its value just might break every record yet. Moving on, feast your eyes on this 1985 quarter. At first glance, it's just another battered survivor from decades of circulation. The surfaces are streaked with grime, there's corrosion nibbling at the rim, and the entire coin looks like it's been lost and found 100 times over. But here's where things get absolutely wild. A 1985 quarter in this exact kind of rough, seen better days condition just stunned the coin collecting world by selling for a staggering $1,247,000. What could possibly make this coin, which most people would ignore or even toss out, worth more than a luxury penthouse? The answer is one of the rarest and most mysterious mint errors ever recorded. In 1985, during a hectic transition at the U.S. Mint, a microscopic handful of quarters were accidentally struck on experimental titanium plankets. These blanks were originally intended for a never-released commemorative series connected to the space program. Titanium is incredibly tough, nearly immune to corrosion, and it gives the coin a subtle bluish shimmer in the right light. Most people would never notice, but if you spot a 1985 quarter that seems unusually resistant to wear or has a faint blue-gray glow, you could be staring at a fortune. Even in a state that looks like it's been through a natural disaster. One of these titanium planchet quarters recently rocked an auction house with a $1,247,000 hammer price. The backstory is pure collector legend. It spent decades in a junk box, dismissed as a damaged coin, until a sharp-eyed appraiser realized it hadn't corroded like the others. And believe it or not, a pristine, uncirculated example of this error reportedly changed hands privately for $2.1 million, a number that would leave even the most seasoned collectors speechless. But the titanium planchet isn't the only error that can turn an ordinary 1985 quarter into a life-changing windfall. Some quarters from this year were struck with catastrophic die breaks, massive raised areas where the die shattered. These cut errors have brought in anywhere from $127,000 to $298,000, even when they're heavily circulated. Then there are the dramatic broad strikes, where the coin was struck outside the collar. making it oversized and misshapen. Those have fetched $156,000 to $387,000 depending on condition. And don't forget the double-struck errors, where the coin was hit twice by the press, creating overlapping images. Those can command $189,000 to $445,000 at auction. The stories behind these finds are just as jaw-dropping as the prices. One of our subscribers from Nevada found a strangely pristine 1985 quarter in her grandmother's old jewelry box, surrounded by coins that had turned green and crusty with age. This one quarter stood out, almost untouched by time. Testing revealed it was a titanium planchet error, and that single coin paid for her grandchildren's college and a dream retirement. Another collector from Maine picked up a massively oversized 1985 quarter at a flea market, thinking it was a damaged foreign coin. He paid just 50 cents. That damaged coin turned out to be a rare broadstrike, later auctioned for over $300,000. Talk about the ultimate flea market score. If you've ever found a 1985 quarter that seemed unusually tough, had a strange blue tint, looked oversized, or showed weird doubling, you need to share your story in the comments. Your find could be the next viral sensation, inspiring thousands to dig through their change with fresh eyes and new hope. And if these wild stories have you on the edge of your seat, make sure to hit subscribe and ring the bell, because the next coin in this series features an error so rare. Even veteran collectors are left in total disbelief when the auction gavel comes down. Next up, you're not going to believe the story behind this absolutely hammered 1986 quarter. Just look at it. The surface is battered with decades of scratches, the rim is worn down almost to nothing, and the entire coin is coated in a gritty patina that would make any casual collector think it's just junk. But here's the jaw-dropper. A 1986 quarter in this exact Senetal condition just made headlines when it sold for a staggering $1,456,000 at auction. So what's the secret behind this coin's superstar status? In 1986, the Philadelphia Mint was in the middle of a hush-hush experiment with a new copper-silver composite planchet, meant for a commemorative series that never actually launched. Due to a wild mix-up in the planchet bins, a tiny number of regular Washington quarters ended up being struck on these experimental blanks. The result? A coin that's heavier than normal, about 6.8 grams instead of the usual 5.67 in. If you look closely, you'll catch a reddish silver undertone peeking through, especially in the worn spots. Most people would never notice, but for those who do, it's like hitting a numismatic jackpot, even in this rough, circulated state. One of these composite planchet 1986 quarters shocked everyone by fetching $1,456,000 at a major auction. The story behind the discovery is pure Americana. A construction worker found it at the bottom of his grandfather's old toolbox, buried under rusty nails and washers. He almost tossed it out, but that odd reddish gleam and extra heft made him curious enough to get it checked. And if you think that's wild, an uncirculated version of this same error quietly changed hands for a mind-blowing $2.8 million just last year. That's more than a luxury beach house, all hiding in a coin jar. But it's not just the composite planchet you should be hunting for. Some 1986 quarters were struck with dramatic die clashes, where the dies hit each other without a coin in between, leaving ghostly outlines from the opposite side embedded in the metal. Even in rough shape, these can bring in $234,000 to $567,000. Then there are the wild lamination errors, where the outer layer of metal peels up in dramatic flaps. Those have sold for anywhere from $298,000 to $689,000. And don't forget the off-metal strikes, where a 1986 quarter was accidentally struck on a cent planchet, turning it coppery and underweight. Those rarities have pulled in for $145,000 to $892,000 at auction. The stories behind these finds are just as emotional as the prices. One of our subscribers from Texas found a heavy Reddish 1986 quarter in her late husband's change jar. It sat there for over 30 years before she realized what she had. That single coin paid off her house and secured her retirement. Another collector in Oregon spotted a quarter with peeling metal at a garage sale, paid a quarter for it, and ended up with a lamination error worth over $650,000. Imagine the look on their faces when they realized what they'd found. If you've ever come across a 1986 quarter that feels heavier than usual, has a reddish glow, peeling metal, or strange ghost images, you need to share your story in the comments. Your discovery could be the next viral sensation, inspiring thousands of others to check their change with new hope. And if these unbelievable stories have you hooked, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because up next, we're about to reveal a coin with an error so rare, it's rewriting the record books and leaving collectors in total disbelief. Have you ever found a coin that just felt different? What's your best coin jar story? Drop your experience below. Your story could be featured in the next episode.